The water came without warning at 4 a.m. Harper Rivers woke to her father's desperate screaming, echoing through their small house in Waverly, Tennessee. "Quick to the attic! Only take what's important!" The Cumberland River had burst its banks after days of relentless rain, turning their quiet neighborhood into a deadly torrent. Without thinking, the 10-year-old girl grabbed her mother's violin case. It still sat on the same chair in the corner, dust covering it, untouched since Mum's funeral 8 months ago. As the muddy water rose to their waists, swallowing photo albums and furniture, Harper clutched the case against her chest like a lifeline. By morning, everything was gone except the mud and memories. 20 miles away in Nashville, André Rieu was preparing for what he thought would be just another concert at the Music City Center. He had no idea that a folded piece of paper, carried by a flood survivor with desperate eyes, was about to change everything. "Mr. Rieu," his young assistant Sage whispered, bursting into his dressing room an hour before showtime. "A girl left this at reception. She said it was urgent." André glanced at the note, irritated by the interruption. Then his eyes caught the childish handwriting, some letters smudged by water or tears. "Dear Mr. Rieu, my mama is gone and my house too, but I heard her last night. She said you know her song, you must play it. She said it's called Lost Time." The paper trembled in André's hands. Lost Time was a composition he had buried 30 years ago, along with letters, photos, and memories of a woman named Charlotte Rivers, a brilliant music student he had loved and lost when he chose his career over her heart. "Where is she?" André whispered. "Backstage, sir. She has a violin with her and won't leave until you see her." And that's how André Rieu's world stopped in the middle of a live concert broadcast to 42 countries, because sometimes the past refuses to stay buried, especially when it arrives in the form of a muddy little girl carrying her dead mother's violin and humming a melody that should never have existed. The rain had been falling non-stop for days over Middle Tennessee. The Cumberland River burst its banks and turned streets into rivers, gardens into swamps. In the small town of Waverly, 20 minutes from Nashville, the water had silently crept into houses at 4 a.m. with deadly stealth. Harper was awakened by her father's screaming, "Quick to the attic, only take what's important." Without thinking, she grabbed her mother's violin case. It still stood on the same chair in the corner, dust over it, but untouched. The violin had been untouched since Mum's funeral 8 months ago. Blake, her father, tried to keep the water out with wooden planks, in vain. Within 10 minutes, the house was waist-deep in water. Photo albums, furniture, clothes, everything floated. Only what was in the attic stayed dry. When the water receded, nothing but mud remained. They got blankets and tea from the emergency services. Harper sat on the curb with the case on her lap. She didn't speak. The next morning, in a shelter in Franklin, she gave a folded piece of paper to a volunteer. "Can you give this to him?" "To Mr. Rieu." "To who, sweetie?" "He always plays at the center. Mom said his music brings back things that were lost." At that moment, André Rieu was in his dressing room at the Music City Center, busy with the final rehearsal for his summer concert. Nothing seemed special that day until Sage, the young assistant, stormed in with a note and a melody that shouldn't have existed. André Rieu's dressing room smelled like coffee and old wood. It was an hour before the concert. The tension hung in the air, as always before a big evening. Mason paced back and forth with his phone. Jackson stood by the door, looking nervously outside. And André sat in front of the mirror, straightening his tie. Sage knocked softly. She held a folded piece of paper in her hand. "Mr. Rieu, this was left at reception. A girl said it was urgent." André looked up, irritated by the interruption. "Sage, we go live in an hour. This can wait. She said it was about her mother and about a song you know." That caught his attention. He took the note. His eyes glided over the words written in childish handwriting, some letters smudged by water or tears. "Dear Mr. Rieu, my mama is gone, and my house too, but I heard her last night. She said you know her song, you must play it. She said it's called Lost Time." André felt his heart skip a beat. His hands began to tremble. The paper almost fell from his fingers. "Where is she, the girl?" "Behind the stage. Sir, she has a violin with her. She wouldn't leave until you had seen her." Jackson stepped forward. "André, we don't have time for this kind of thing." The concert starts in... Bring her to me now. Mason looked up surprised. He knew that tone. His father only used it when something was very important. Father? What's going on? André gave no answer. He stared at the paper as if it were a bomb that could explode at any moment. Lost Time was not a title anyone should know. It was a composition he had buried, literally in a box in his basement, along with letters, photos, and memories he never wanted to see again. Sage came back with Harper. The girl looked vulnerable. Her clothes were clean but too big, obviously borrowed. Her shoes were still muddy. She carried a small red violin case clutched against her chest, as if it were the only thing she had left. André stood up and slowly walked toward her. He knelt down so he was at eye level. What's your name? Harper. Harper, where did you hear that name? Lost Time? From my mama. She always sang it to me. She said it was from someone she really missed. André felt a lump in his throat. What was your mum's name? Charlotte. The world seemed to fall silent. André heard nothing more. No sounds from outside, no voices around him, only that name, Charlotte. Mason saw the change in his father's face. Father, do you know her? André nodded slowly, his eyes still on Harper. Charlotte Rivers. She was someone from my past. Someone I should never have let go. Jackson looked shocked. André, we don't have time for this now. The concert can wait. André's voice sounded harder than he intended. He took a deep breath. Harper, may I see your violin? She hesitated, but then slowly opened the case. Inside lay an old violin, damaged by water but still whole. On the inside of the lid was engraved in elegant letters, For Charlotte, the music of my heart, A.R. André's breath caught. He had written those words himself 30 years ago, for a woman he had loved but lost because he had been too afraid to choose. I gave this to her. Harper looked at him with wide eyes. You really knew Mama? Yes, long ago. Mason came closer. Father, what's happening here? Who was this woman to you? André stood up, his gaze still on the violin. Charlotte she was my first love. We studied together at Belmont University's music program. She was brilliant, gifted. But I chose my career and said, she disappeared. Why have you never told us about this? Mason's voice sounded wounded. Because I tried to forget it. Because it was too painful. Harper took André's hand. Mama said you were the only one who could play the song. She said you had to finish it. Finish it. She said it was never finished. That it needed an ending. André felt tears coming. He had written Lost Time after Charlotte's departure. It was his way of grieving, but he had never finished it because he didn't know how. The ending was too painful to write. Jackson interrupted again. André, the hall is full. We really have to... Tonight the concert changes. We're playing Lost Time. What? That piece doesn't even exist. It was never published. Tonight it will be. Mason looked concerned. Father, are you ready for this? Emotionally? André looked at Harper. I have to be. For her and for Charlotte. Jackson shook his head. This is madness. We have contracts, obligations. I don't give a damn what the contracts say. This is about something bigger. At that moment, an older man came in. He was neatly dressed but had a tired look. It was Clayton, Blake's neighbor and Harper's guardian. Mr. Rieu, sorry for the interruption. I'm Clayton. I brought Harper here. Who are you? A friend of the family and also a musician. Formally, at least. André studied him more carefully. There was something familiar about that man. Clayton. Clayton Miller. The man nodded. You have a good memory. You played first cello in the Nashville Symphony. That's right. Until I stopped. Just like you stopped with Lost Time. André frowned. How do you know about that? Charlotte told me about it. We were friends. After you left, I stayed close to her. I helped her where I could. There was a charged silence. Mason looked from one to the other. Wait a minute. Do you mean that you... I loved her, Clayton interrupted, but she still loved your father, even after everything. André felt overwhelmed. Why are you here? Because Harper deserves to hear that song, and because Charlotte would have wanted it. Harper looked up at Clayton. Clayton has always taken care of us, even when Mama got sick. Andre's stomach turned. Sick? She had cancer, Clayton said softly. She died 8 months ago. Andre nearly collapsed to his knees. I didn't know. I had no idea. She didn't want you to know. Said you had your own life. Mason put a hand on his father's shoulder. Father. Andre wiped his eyes. I should have been there. I should have. You can be there now, Clayton said. For Harper and for Charlotte's memory. At that moment Taylor came in, a young journalist who was supposed to cover the concert. She had heard about the delay and came to see what was going on. Mr. Rieu, is it true that you plan to change the program? Jackson tried to stop her. Taylor, this is private. Let her, Andre said. Maybe this story should be told. Taylor took out her notepad. What are you going to play? A piece I wrote 30 years ago for a woman I lost. And tonight I'm going to finish it with her daughter. Harper looked shocked. But I can't even play properly. Your mother lives on in you, Andre said. That's enough. Jackson threw his hands in the air. This is a disaster. We have no sheet music, no rehearsal, and you want to put a child on stage. Yes, the sponsors will be furious. Let them rage. Mason looked at the clock. We have 35 minutes left. Andre turned to Sage. Get my old suitcase from the car, the black one. There's a folder in it with sheet music. Look for Lost Time. Sage ran away. Clayton stepped forward. Mr. Rieu, may I say something? Go ahead. Charlotte once confided to me that she hoped you and Harper would meet someday. She said you both missed the same thing, closure. Andre swallowed. Then I'll make sure we get that. Taylor made notes. This will be the story of the year, Jackson groaned, or the biggest professional blunder ever. But Andre wasn't listening anymore. He looked at Harper and saw Charlotte in her eyes. The same determination, the same love for music. Come, he said to the girl. We have work to do. The rehearsal room behind the stage was small and cluttered. Andre spread out the old sheet music. The paper was yellowed, the notes faded. He laid it out on the music stand and stared at it as if it were a lost treasure. Harper stood next to him with her mother's violin in her hands. She was trembling slightly. I don't know if I can do this. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to feel it. Mason came in with coffee. He gave a cup to his father. Father, are you sure about this decision? Surer than I've been in years. Clayton sat in the corner and looked on. He had brought his own cello. If it's okay with you, I'd like to play along. Andre looked up, surprised. You still play? Not in public anymore, but for Charlotte, I would make an exception. Andre nodded. That would be an honor. Sage came in with more sheet music. I found everything you asked for, but there's something else, a letter. She gave a sealed envelope to Andre. His name was on it, written in Charlotte's handwriting. Andre's hands trembled as he opened the envelope. Inside was a letter dated 3 months before Charlotte died. Dear Andre, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. I'm writing this because I want you to know that I never blamed you for anything. You chose your music, and I respected that. But I hope you'll finish Lost Time someday. Not for me, but for yourself. And if you ever meet Harper, let her hear what music really means. She has your talent, you know, more than she realizes. With love, Charlotte. Andre's eyes filled with tears. He couldn't speak. Mason read over his shoulder and put a hand on his father's back. She still loved you. And I loved her. I was just too stupid to say it. Harper looked at the letter. Mama wrote this? Andre nodded. She wanted me to meet you and for us to play together. Yes. Clayton stood up. Then we should start. We don't have much time left. Andre wiped his eyes dry and picked up his violin. Okay, Harper. I want you to listen to me and try to follow along. It's not about being perfect, it's about feeling. Harper nodded nervously. Andre began to play. The first notes of Lost Time were soft, melancholic. They filled the room with deep sadness. Harper listened carefully, and then began to play along cautiously. Her tone was hesitant, her timing not perfect, but there was something raw and real in it. something that could only come from someone who had known loss. Clayton added his cello. The sounds merged, creating a harmony that was painfully beautiful. Mason filmed everything on his phone. He knew this was a moment that had to be preserved. After a few minutes, André stopped. That was good. Very good. Harper looked up, her eyes shining. Really? Really? You have your mother's talent. At that moment, Taylor came back in. Mr. Rieu, may I ask a few more questions? Jackson followed her. Taylor, this is not the time. It's okay, André said. What do you want to know? Why now? Why this piece after 30 years? André thought for a moment. Because I finally understand that some things shouldn't be buried. They should be heard. And the girl, why her? Because she continues the story. She's Charlotte's legacy. Taylor made notes. This will be a beautiful story. Jackson shook his head. A beautiful disaster, you mean? Mason looked irritated. Jackson, you're only making this harder. I'm trying to bring realism. We have sponsors, contracts. I'm tired of contracts, André shouted. This isn't about money or fame. This is about something I should have done 30 years ago. Jackson sighed. And if it fails? Then it fails. But at least I will have tried. At that moment, an unknown man came in. He wore a suit and had a briefcase with him. His face was stern. Mr. Rieu, I am Joseph van der Berg, lawyer. André looked surprised. Lawyer for what? I represent the estate of the Sand Foundation. We heard that you plan to play a certain piece tonight. Lost time. That's right, so what? Joseph opened his briefcase and took out a document. According to this contract from 1994, you transferred the rights to this piece to the foundation. You may not perform it publicly without permission. André felt his blood boiling. That contract was a mistake. Perhaps, but it's legally binding. Mason stepped forward. This is ridiculous. It's his own composition. Not anymore. He sold it for financial reasons, and the foundation has the right to determine when and where it's played. Clayton also stood up. And the foundation has decided that it may never be played. Isn't that right? Joseph looked uncomfortable. That's correct. Why? André asked. Because it's complicated. There are other interests involved. What interests? Joseph hesitated. Mr. Rieu, you know that Charlotte Rivers once tried to register this piece as her own work. André felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. What? She made an attempt to publish it under her name. The foundation discovered this and threatened a lawsuit. Charlotte withdrew, but the piece was blocked from that moment on. Harper looked shocked. Why would Mama do something like that? Clayton put a hand on her shoulder. She didn't do it out of greed, Harper. She did it because she hoped André would notice it, that he would come back. André felt sick. I had no idea. Of course not, Joseph said. The foundation kept it quiet. But now that you want to play it again, they're concerned that old wounds will reopen. Mason looked angry. So you're here to tell my father he can't play his own music. I'm here to warn him that if he does, the foundation will take legal action. André looked at Harper. She looked scared, as if everything she had hoped for was falling apart. Mr. van der Berg, André said calmly, you can tell the foundation that I'm going to play Lost Time tonight, with or without their permission. Then you'll have to bear the consequences. I'll take that risk. Joseph nodded curtly. As you wish, but know that this won't just go away. He left. Jackson looked defeated. André, this is worse than I thought. If the foundation starts a lawsuit, let them, André said. I'm tired of this. All these years I've given in to fear and contracts. No more, Taylor wrote quickly. This is getting bigger and bigger. Harper walked up to André. Mr. Rieu, maybe we shouldn't do it. I don't want you to get in trouble. André knelt down and took her hands. Harper, sometimes you have to fight for what's important, and this is important. Mason looked at the clock. We have 10 minutes left. What are we going to do? André stood up. We're going to play, exactly as planned. Clayton picked up his cello. I'm behind you. Sage nodded. Me too. Jackson sighed deeply. Okay then, but if this goes wrong, it's not my fault. André smiled weakly. I accept that. They walked to the stage. The audience was impatient. There was murmuring and clapping. André stepped onto the stage. The lights came on. Thousands of eyes looked at him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "tonight I'm going to do something I should have done 30 years ago. I'm going to play a piece I wrote for a woman I loved and lost, and I'm going to play it with her daughter." There was a murmur through the hall. Harper walked onto the stage, her violin in her hands. She looked small and vulnerable under the bright lights. André looked at her and nodded encouragingly. "Ready?" She nodded even though she was trembling all over. The first note sounded soft, fragile, full of emotion. And then the music really began. The first notes of Lost Time filled the hall. It was as if time stood still. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The music was a living entity floating through the space, filling every corner with pain that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Harper played along. Her fingers followed André's lead. She made mistakes. Her timing wasn't perfect, but it didn't matter. What she played came from a place deeper than technique. It came from loss, from love, from a desire to hear her mother again. In the hall, people began to cry. Women wiped their eyes. Men stared at the stage as if they saw something sacred. Clayton played his cello with his eyes closed. He thought of Charlotte, of the years he had loved her without her knowing. He played for her, for the woman he had never been able to get but had never forgotten. André felt every note flow through his body. This wasn't just music. This was an exorcism, a liberation from 30 years of regret and sorrow. But then, halfway through the piece, something strange happened. Harper suddenly stopped playing. She lowered her violin and stared at the audience. Her eyes were wide open, as if she saw something no one else could see. "Mama," she whispered. André stopped too. "Harper, what is it?" But Harper wasn't listening. She walked to the edge of the stage, her gaze fixed on something in the crowd. "Mama, is that you?" Mason quickly came onto the stage. "Harper, what do you see?" Harper pointed to the back of the hall. "There. She's standing there. She's smiling at me." The audience turned around, but there was no one there, only an empty space by the exit. André felt his heart break. The girl was overwhelmed. Too much emotion, too much pressure. He walked over to her and put a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, you don't have to continue." But Harper shook her head. "No, she wants me to continue. She says the song has to be finished." "How do you know that?" "I hear her in my head. She's singing along." There was a charged silence. No one knew what to say. Then someone stepped out of the audience, an older woman, elegantly dressed. She walked forward and stopped in front of the stage. "Mr. Rieu," she said with a strong voice. "I have to tell you something." André looked surprised. "Who are you?" "My name is Victoria Rivers. I'm Charlotte's mother." The hall collectively held its breath. André felt his knees go weak. You are Charlotte's mother." "Yes. And I'm here because I want this song to be played, completely as it should be." Harper looked at the woman. "Grandma?" Victoria nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm here. But you never visited me after Mama left." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I know, and I'm ashamed of that. But I'm here now, and I want you to know that your mother would be so proud of you." Harper began to cry. Victoria climbed onto the stage and hugged her granddaughter. André stood there stunned. "Why did you never come? Why did Charlotte never tell me she had a daughter?" Victoria looked at him with a mixture of sadness and anger. "Because you left, Mr. Rieu. You chose your career and left her behind. She was pregnant when you left. But she didn't want to burden you with that responsibility." André felt as if the ground fell away beneath him. "Pregnant? Do you mean—" Victoria nodded. "Yes, Harper is your daughter." The hall exploded in murmurs. Cameras flashed. Taylor wrote frantically. André stared at Harper, who looked at him with Charlotte's eyes. Suddenly all the puzzle pieces fell into place. The resemblance, the talent, the connection he had felt from the moment he saw her. Mason stood frozen. "Father, is this true?" André couldn't speak. He just looked at Harper. Victoria continued. "Charlotte never wanted to tell you. She said you had your own life, but when she got sick, she changed her mind. She wrote that letter hoping you would find her someday. That you would find Harper. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? André asked, his voice hoarse. Because I was angry with you, with the world, with life. But when I heard that Harper had gone to you, I realized I owed it to her. And to Charlotte too. Harper looked from André to Victoria. Are you my father? André knelt down in front of her. It looks that way. Harper began to cry harder. Mama always said my father was an important man, that he made music for the whole world. I thought she was telling a fairy tale. It wasn't a fairy tale, André said, his own tears flowing freely. It was the truth. He hugged her, and for the first time in 30 years, he felt something he had forgotten. A feeling of completeness. The audience stood up and applauded, not because the music was finished, but because they were witnesses to something much bigger than a concert. But then Joseph came onto the stage. He had papers in his hand and looked determined. Mr. Rieu, I must officially order you to stop. Playing this piece is a breach of contract. André stood up, his posture calm but determined. Mr. Vanderberg, I'm not playing this for a contract. I'm playing it for my daughter. That doesn't change anything about the legal situation. Victoria stepped forward. On the contrary, it changes everything. She took a document from her bag. This is a statement that Charlotte signed before she died. It states that all rights to lost time go to her daughter, not to the foundation, not to anyone else, to Harper. Joseph took the document and read it quickly. His face darkened. This is authentic. Of course it is. Charlotte knew this moment would come. She made sure her daughter would be protected. Joseph looked defeated. Then the foundation can't do anything about this. Exactly. He turned around and left, his papers clutched tightly. Jackson looked relieved. So we can continue? André nodded. We can continue. He looked at Harper. Are you ready to finish this? Harper wiped away her tears and nodded bravely. Yes. They picked up their instruments again. This time it felt different. It was no longer a concert. It was a reunion, a closure, a beginning. The music resumed, but now with a new layer. Victoria sang along softly from the side of the stage. Her voice was weak but full of love. And then at the climax of the piece, something magical happened. Harper played a note that wasn't in the sheet music, a note that no one had taught her, but it was the right note, the note that completed the piece. André looked at her amazed. How did you know that? Harper smiled through her tears. Mama taught it to me in my dream. And so for thousands of people and millions of viewers worldwide, Lost Time was finally completed. Not as André had intended, but as it always should have been. The music died away in a final, carefully held note. The hall remained silent. No one dared to move, as if they were afraid the moment would break. Then the applause exploded. It was overwhelming, deafening. People stood up, crying, laughing, moved to their core. André put down his violin and hugged Harper again. You were perfect. Really? More than perfect. You were yourself. Mason came onto the stage and hugged them both. Father, I can't believe this really happened. Neither can I. Victoria joined them, her face wet with tears. Charlotte would have been so proud. André looked at her. I'm sorry for everything. I should have been there. You didn't know. And now you are here. That's what counts. Clayton also came forward. He put his hand on André's shoulder. You made it right, friend. Thank you, Clayton, for everything you did for Charlotte and Harper. It was the least I could do. The audience kept applauding. Taylor stood on the sidelines, her notepad full. She knew this was the story of her lifetime. Jackson also came to the stage. For the first time that evening, he smiled. André, I have to admit, this was incredible. So you're not angry anymore? How can I be angry after what we just witnessed? Sage brought water for everyone. Mr. Rieu, the phones are ringing off the hook. Everyone wants to talk to you. Let them wait. This moment is for Harper. He sat down next to his daughter. Tell me about your life, about Charlotte. I want to know everything. Harper told about her childhood in Waverley, about how Charlotte had raised her with music and love, about the last months when Charlotte was sick, about how they looked at the stars together, and Charlotte promised she would always be with her. She said that if I ever got lost, I should listen to the music, that music would bring me home. And it did. It brought me to you. André felt a warmth in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. Harper, I know I wasn't there when you were growing up, and I can't change that, but I want to be there for you now, if you'll give me that chance. Harper looked at him with big eyes. You want to be my father? If you'll give me that chance. She thought for a moment and then nodded. I think Mama would want that. I think so too. Victoria came and sat with them. Harper, sweetheart, I also want to be with you. I've wasted too much time being angry. I want to get to know my granddaughter. That would be nice, Grandma. Mason looked at his father. So I have a sister? André grinned. It looks that way. That's wonderful. Blake, Harper's foster father, also came onto the stage. He had watched the entire concert from the sidelines. Harper, are you okay? Yes, Papa Blake, I'm fine. He looked at André. So you're her real father? Biologically, yes, but you raised her. You're just as much her father as I am. Blake shook André's hand. Thank you for what you did tonight, and for what you'll do for her. I'll do my best. Taylor came closer. Mr. Rieu, may I ask a few more questions? Of course. What are you going to do now? André looked at Harper. I'm going to make sure she has everything she needs, a new house, a new start, and if she wants, she can study music. I'll help her. And lost time? Will you play it again? Only if Harper wants to. This was her moment, not mine. Harper smiled. Maybe we can play it together. Sometimes. I would like that very much. The audience began to leave slowly, but many stayed behind to take pictures and congratulate them. It was clear that this evening had made history. Jackson came to André. We already have hundreds of interview requests. Everyone wants to hear this story. Then they'll have to be patient. First comes Harper. Jackson nodded. I understand. Mason arranged transportation for everyone. Father, where are we going? Home. My house. Harper and Victoria are welcome to stay as long as they want. Victoria smiled. Thank you. That means a lot. As they left the theatre, Harper looked back once more at the stage. Thank you, Mama, she whispered. You were right. The music brought me home. And somewhere, in a place no one could see, Charlotte smiled. 6 months later, André stood in his Nashville garden watching Harper play with the neighborhood children. Her laughter echoed across the yard, and for the first time in decades, he felt complete. Dad, Harper called out, running toward him with grass stains on her dress. Can we play Lost Time tonight? I want to try the ending Mama taught me in my dream. Victoria emerged from the kitchen, flour dusting her apron. She had moved into a small apartment nearby and spent most afternoons cooking for what had become their unconventional but perfect family. Dinner's ready, she announced, then whispered to André. She asks to play that song every night. She says she feels Charlotte listening. Maybe she is, André replied, watching his daughter, a miracle he'd discovered through tragedy. That evening, as they did every night, André and Harper sat in his music room. The walls were lined with awards and photographs, but the most treasured item was Charlotte's violin, now Harper's, carefully restored after the flood damage. Tell me about Mama when she was young, Harper asked as she tuned her strings. André smiled, memories flowing like music. Your mother could make a violin sing in ways that seemed impossible. She had this gift, just like you, of playing not just the notes, but the emotions behind them. Do you think she'd be proud of me? Sweetheart, she'd be over the moon. You've become everything she dreamed you could be. They played together as the sun set over Nashville, Harper's technique improving with each passing day. But her heart, that indefinable quality that made music transcendent, remaining pure and untouched by formal training. Dad, Harper said suddenly, stopping mid-phrase, I want to help other kids like me, kids who lost things in the flood. That conversation led to the Lost Time Reclaimed Foundation. André poured his heart into the project, using his fame and resources to provide instruments and music therapy to children affected by natural disasters. Harper became the foundation's youngest ambassador, her story inspiring donations and volunteers from around the world. Blake rebuilt his bakery in Waverley with André's help, and it became a gathering place for flood survivors. Clayton moved to Nashville and formed a small ensemble with André, performing at nursing homes and hospitals. What had started as a night of personal healing became a movement of musical recovery. On the first anniversary of their concert, the town of Waverley held a memorial service for those lost in the flood. André and Harper performed "Lost Time" one more time in the rebuilt town square, this time with a full string quartet including Clayton and Mason. "Your mother would be proud of all of us," Victoria whispered to Harper as the last note faded into the Tennessee evening air. 5 years later, Harper, now 15 and an accomplished violinist in her own right, stood on the stage of Carnegie Hall. This was her debut with the New York Philharmonic, and every seat was filled. In the front row sat André, Victoria, Blake, Clayton, and Mason, her chosen family, complete despite their imperfect beginning. She raised her violin and began to play "Lost Time," but this was a new arrangement, one she had written herself. It started with the original melody André had composed 30 years ago, moved through the pain of loss he had captured, but ended with something entirely new: hope. The audience rose in a thunderous ovation, but Harper only had eyes for the empty seat beside André, left vacant in Charlotte's memory. As the applause continued, she could swear she heard it. A second violin, harmony from beyond, her mother's voice joining hers across the impossible divide between life and memory. "Love never truly leaves," Harper had said in an interview earlier that day. "It just finds new ways to express itself. Mine speaks through music." After the concert, as the family gathered backstage, André pulled his daughter close. "Your mother's greatest composition wasn't Lost Time," he told her. "It was you." That night, in a small hotel room overlooking Central Park, Harper called Blake to share every detail of her performance. Then she video-chatted with the children from her foundation, promising to visit soon. Finally, she sat by the window and played softly for just herself and the stars, a lullaby her mother used to hum, notes that connected past and future, loss and love, proving once again that the most beautiful music comes not from perfection, but from the human heart. In Nashville, an old man sat in his garden with his granddaughter on his lap. "Tell me the story again, Grandpa," the little girl asked. "About the night music brought our family together." And André smiled, knowing that some stories, like some melodies, are meant to be played again and again, each time revealing new harmonies, new meanings, new reasons to believe that even what seems lost forever can find its way home through love, through music, through the simple act of never giving up hope.